Hi there, this is Iryna Barnett, and I love having conversations about life's defining moments and understanding human experiences. Moments That Define Us podcast is dedicated to healing the world one story, one defining moment at a time. So let's get into another conversation. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Moments That Define Us. For those of you who know me, you know that I'm an immigrant. For those of you who've been listening to the podcast since the very beginning, I'm originally from Ukraine. I came to the United States when I was 19 years old, and I came on my own. I chose to come here. I wanted to learn a little bit more English. I just got a degree in education, and I wanted to work with kids, so I found this program and I came here. This is my story, and this is just a very brief moment of my story. Each immigrant has different stories. Sometimes people come here when they're kids. Sometimes people come here later in life. Sometimes people have to flee their country because of war or any other political prosecution. Again, each of us have a story that worth hearing and story that worth sharing. Because I am an immigrant, I love hearing other immigrants' story. And today, I am very grateful for the person that I am having conversation with. She an immigrant just myself, but has a different story. Her name is Wafa Saeed. She is an immigrant from Sudan. Wafa, welcome to Moments That Define Us.
Thank you for having me.
You know, this episode will come out after Thanksgiving, but as we lead into this Thanksgiving season, and Thanksgiving, as an immigrant, we didn't celebrate Thanksgiving in Ukraine. So Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday because it doesn't involve presents. It doesn't involve any type of consumerism and purchasing stuff. Mm-hmm. It involves food. Mm-hmm. It involves gathering. It involves surround ourselves with people that we love, right? So today I'm extremely grateful for you because I know you have an amazing story and I'm really excited to hear it and to share it with other listeners.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to be here.
So I wanted to start at the beginning. So you're originally from Sudan. Mm-hmm. You came here when you were about 3 years old. So if you can tell me, why did your parents made a decision to come to United States?
My father, he actually, this is the 5th year of his passing. So it's very interesting that we're talking about this today. But my father was very involved politically in Sudan. And with a lot of things that were happening back in the 80s, it was safer for him to be outside of Sudan and to be here. So he came around 1987, 88, and then came back to see us. I was born in 89. And when he came back to America is when, a little bit after that is when we came and followed him. And we've been in Colorado ever since.
When you came to United States, and of course you are 3, right? Mm-hmm. But what kind of your early memories of being here?
I would say one memory that I kind of always refer back to is being in school.
Okay.
So, first grade was very difficult for me.
Did you speak English?
I learned English in first grade. But I remember going home and crying that I didn't understand the students because my first language was Arabic, and we were kind of homeschooled for the kindergarten and pre-K. So all I knew was Arabic at the time. So going to school was very hard. And I remember because Arabic is right to left, I was right-handed. Mm-hmm. And my teacher wouldn't let me write with my right hand. She actually used to tape my right hand so I could write with my left hand because English is from left to right. And so that memory I have, and I remember the first time I actually was able to read from an English book and actually understand it, that made me love reading so much. And that moment, still sticks with me, that I was able to read in first grade after being laughed at and crying and not knowing English. And that kind of pushed me to always want to do more at such a young age. But I knew that I had to always do more if I wanted to kind of be seen as at the same level as my other classmates.
Yeah. It seems like that moment that you describe where you were able to read for the first time, it sounds to me that it was your defining moment to love reading, would you say?
Absolutely. I'm a very avid reader. I actually have a goal every year to read at least 100 books every year. So
Okay. 100 books?
Yes.
I am so far behind. I've gotten better, but 100? No, good for you.
I love it. I mean, I just being engulfed in a story, and any kind of story, any type of kind of category, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, professional development, self-development. It's just being able to take all that in is one of my favorite things to do. So anytime you see me, I will have a book in my hand.
I can relate to that. Reading, I also have a defining moment for another time, but like when books became my safe place,
Exactly.
And I'm like you, when I'm somewhere, I'm like, I need a book.
Yes.
I need a book.
Absolutely. Just the escape. But it's also for me, like, understanding that, it's so different when I leave my house, and being in the American world versus being at home and being Sudanese. There's that kind of switch, right, that you have to do. And it's for me, reading is understanding both parts of me, and how do I do that in these stories? How do I do that in these books? So a lot of the books I read are either from very famous Sudanese authors or American books, but trying to understand how do I balance myself in both of these identities that I've taken.
Oh, you brought up something very interesting that I am also still battling as an immigrant, and I wonder how that is for you, because you said I wanted to find myself in those identities, right? Because you were born in Sudan,
Right.
came here at 3, and I know there's a lot of defining moments when you went back that we will get to it. But I wanted to ask you now, tell me if you still have that battling of identities. Am I American? Am I Sudanese? How do they come together? Like,
Right.
Tell me about that identity battle, because I don't want to speak for every immigrant, but I feel like a lot of us battle that identity.
Absolutely. I think it's a lifelong battle. I think as much as you can try to find balance within it, there's always going to be rooms or situations where you're showing up more than the other. And I think that's okay. I think the beauty of being an immigrant is that you do have those two sides to kind of refer to, where you get the best of both worlds. You're able to view things from a different perspective than others. You're able to deal with situations a little bit differently. So for me, it's really understanding that both exist. They coexist within me, and that sometimes I do have to be one more than the other. I haven't found that exact balance because, like I said, I think depending on the situation or depending on the room that you're in, one side is going to shine a little bit brighter than the other. But as a whole, as a person as a whole, what makes it extremely beautiful is that you have both sides to lean on.
You know, a good friend of mine, her mom came to the United States from Finland when she was in her 20s. And now she is in her 70s. And of course, she still has accent, right? And I love having conversation with her about the identity and belonging. Because she said, when I start talking, people hear my accent and they ask me, oh, where are you from? And she said, I've lived in the United States, almost my whole life. So she's like, when I hear that, it feels like I still don't belong here because they say, where are you from? And she said, but I also, she goes and visits, obviously, her country, but she's like, I don't feel like I'm fully that anymore. So she's like, where do I belong? So I wanted to ask you the question about belonging. Do you do people, because I mean, you were in hijab, so I'm sure that's like, oh, right away, you couldn't be born here, which is like such a stupid thing.
Right.
But I wonder if people ask you, oh, where are you from? Do you have that feeling like, well, I've been living here since I'm 3, so of course I'm here, but my parents and my other identity is from there. I just wonder how, when you think about belonging and living here, tell me how do you think about that, and do you feel like you truly belong here?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think for me, because I came at such a young age, I do feel that there's a sense of belonging here. But it's a very difficult question, because when I do go back home, or when I am home with my family, I belong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really, I think framing belonging is really dependent on, I think for me personally, where I am or what I'm doing. I belong to many different identities, I feel like. Yes, I'm Muslim, I wear my hijab. I consider myself an African American, Black American. I consider myself a Sudanese American, but I consider myself an American. And this has been my home since I was 3. I've grown up here. I've gone to school here. My friends are here. My job is here. My career is here. And then my family isn't here. My memories of where my roots aren't here. My memories of where the house that my family has had for generations isn't here. I have 5 grandmothers and 26 aunts and uncles, so all of them aren't here. So you feel that there's a part of you that's always going to be missing, and it becomes fulfilled once you do visit that country that you're from, because your roots are there. So I think for me, belonging is really understanding that you can belong to more than one place. There is always going to be a part of me that's more American, because I've spent the majority of my life here. But there is always going to be that love and that cultural wanting, and that need to want to be from Sudan or in Sudan, just from the love that my parents have instilled in me for that country, and just because of the fact that I fell in love with Sudan through their eyes, through their memories, and through the stories that I've heard from them, and when I visited and saw my family there. So when I think of home, I do consider both places to be home for me.
That was the most beautiful description of belonging, because you are right. It's you don't have to belong to only one place, right? And I think we as immigrants, we are so lucky in a sense that we know more than one language. Right. We can think in multiple languages. So when I hear people say, oh, speak English, oh, you hear, you speak. And it's like, do you understand that people are so much more smarter if they know more than one language? Exactly. Because they can think and analyze in multiple languages, And I love how you said, when I go back to Sudan, I belong there. When I'm with my family, I belong there. It's really, really beautiful thing. At the very beginning, when I decided to make life here, I struggled with like, where do I belong? But now as I'm getting older, I'm like, I can belong there and I can belong here.
Exactly.
Exactly. And I can be from both worlds, and it's beautiful, and nothing's wrong with that. I wanted to ask you about your school life here. So my first question is, did you, from the very young age, did you always wear hijab, or that was something that you were later in life?
Yeah, no, I started wearing my hijab my junior year of high school.
Okay, so before that you didn't. And I wonder, what did you experience any
any bullying, anything just like throughout your school? Because I know at the beginning you said of your language barrier, that was tough for you. But did you experience any type of bullying being in an American school?
I mean, I would say, I think kids can be mean.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes.
But I think it also comes from a place of not knowing and having different people and different languages and just different cultures around them that they have yet to understand, or maybe even their parents don't understand. I think what I would say the most defining moment that I remember when it comes to bullying is after 9/11. Before that, I wouldn't say that I've had much experience with bullying, but from what I can remember, but after 9/11, I remember I was in 7th grade, and from that is when I felt there was a shift within even classmates. I mean, even in 7th grade, even with teachers, as to there was another layer that was added to me to differentiate me from my classmates or from people that I was around. And I think I understood it very early on, but didn't really understand it enough to process it as to what this could mean. Until I got into high school, until I got into college, and it became more clear, and I was able to understand a little bit more. But I think for me, 7th grade, and just having to hear that, oh, if you're Muslim, you're a terrorist, and if you're this, you're that, and being that young and hearing that and going home and praying as a Muslim, or being with my family as a Muslim, and having to question, like, is this true about me? Like, what is happening? Why are people that are Muslim that practice the same thing that I do are considered like this, or are seen like this, and not really understanding the extremists of it until you get to become a little bit older. So it was a very confusing time. It was a very difficult time, and it took a lot of healing. It
is a young age to be dealing with that. How did you, it's just horrible because so many people, especially people that are Muslim, talk about that, what happened, especially if they, immigrants who were born here, that everything switched after 9/11. So you dealing with that at school, you're not really understanding because you are still 7th grade, young age. You go home. What type of questions are you asking your parents? Because you said I would come home and I would pray. But then this kid saying that. What kind of questions are you asking your parents to really understand what's happening and why it's happening?
I think like I said, I've always loved books, right? So my first step was, hey, I need books to help me understand this. And while Arabic was my first language, the Arabic in the Quran is very different than the Arabic that is spoken. So I was reading it and I can understand bits and pieces, but I wanted kind of it to be a reference for me as to why this was happening. What would cause someone who was practicing the same religion that I was, and the understanding that I have of Islam as a religion of peace, to lead to something like this, right? So I that was my first kind of step as to, can I reference the Quran as ways to understand this? And my dad saw me that I was looking things up on the internet and trying to get all these different books, and asking him, can you order this book for me? And he kind of sat me down and said, hey, let's talk about this. And I remember the conversation that we had. He explained to me that, this has nothing to do with religion. This is something completely political. This is not something that is what we're practicing. This is not something that is what Islam preaches or the Quran is about. And kind of helped me to differentiate that. and, you know, brought up examples of, you know, Christians in the KKK, and brought up different examples of extremism and like what that means in society and what that means in this specific situation. And that helped me see it a little bit differently. Because, you know, we do have in history class where we're learning about American history, we're learning about the KKK, and I was able to compare it to that to understand that this wasn't my religion. This does not have any type of reflection on me or the religion that I practice. This is completely separate, and this has, you know, it's two very different things. And this fear and that questioning and the looks that I was getting at that age was more out of just ignorance of not understanding the religion or not understanding the people that practice it, and out of fear, right? Everyone was very fearful at that time. And so that conversation with my dad like helped me to kind of frame that and be able to deal with it that way. But it did really feel from that point, it became more of having to defend who I am as a person, who I am as a Muslim, what Islam is, and having to lead with that in conversations anytime 9/11 came up, or, you know, America came up, or you're not an American, and, you know, just always having to be on that defense when it came to that.
Your dad, having the conversation with your dad, I can see even now, like when you're talking about, you're probably going back to that time and how your dad explained to you, you know, different extremists. And what is interesting, just living in America for me for over 20 years, is when American media talk about extremists, they are so quick to say, like, if somebody who is African American did something, if somebody who is Muslim did something, they are very quick to put everybody, and like, if you, however you look, you are in that bucket. You must be too.
Yes.
But when it comes to white extremism and white terrorists here in the land of the free, it's very much always like, oh, he was very lonely.
Yes.
He, like, you know, especially
a
lone wolf. You know, he didn't date anybody. So are you giving him or her excuse to go and shoot up a school?
Right.
So it's just, it's very interesting to hear, you know, about the extremism and how it's spoken to. But like what you said at the beginning, how, you know, when the kids started acting a certain way, it's because they didn't know and their family didn't know. And I think it's so important, just going back to reading books and really listening to different perspectives. Learn more, because the news, either that's conservative or liberal, they tell you one thing.
Exactly.
But books and different authors and different, just having conversation, it can help you understand person. It can help you understand story, you know, and yeah, but we are very, well, not we, people that just like very quick to judge, only listen to one point of view, and that is so wrong.
And I think one beauty about America is that, and I think people take this for granted, is that, you know, yes, we have the news, and as you said, it's very one-sided, but you have neighbors. You have schools full of immigrants. You have places of worship that are full of immigrants that you can go into and ask questions and want to learn more and want to expand your knowledge of these people and these cultures, because everyone is here from every part of the world. Everyone in America is an immigrant.
Exactly.
So to me, I think we take that for granted and we focus so much on just race, that we forget the humanity in being able to understand that, you know, I can go to a school, I can go to any mosque or any other place of worship and just say, hey, I want to learn about your people. I want to learn about your religion. And it's not necessarily that you're converting. Absolutely not. It's that you are getting the knowledge you want to better understand the people around you.
Yeah. Absolutely, because when we think about America, you're right, it's, you know, that saying, America is a melting pot. And yeah, you can go and just have a conversation with somebody. You don't, so please go and have conversations with people, because at the end of the day, like, look, you're looking at two immigrants, one from Sudan, one from Ukraine.
Right.
One wears hijab, one doesn't. We all have different religion. We all have different beliefs, but we also have so much in common. We are two women that wanting to do well and strive to do better. We want to succeed in business and in life and have good families and help our communities. So why do we focus on this? What's your religion? What's your race? Just there's so much more about us as humans, and because at the end of the day, we are the human race.
Yes, and I think it's very telling that people are able to meet from different parts of the world in a whole different country, right? In a different place altogether. If we were meant for everyone to be in their own space, in their own label, in their own corner, the world would not be as diverse as it is. I think there's a reason that we are so diverse. There's a reason that people are mixing and melting and being able to be in different countries in their home country and meeting people from other countries. It's because we are meant to learn from each other. There's a reason it's the human race. It's not the divided race.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love that. I heard, forgot the name of the author, but she often say, we are the human race.
Yes.
That's all we are.
Yes. I always say you can't have unity without humanity.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think now there's so much dehumanization of humans.
Yes.
But I still believe, and I wonder if you do, I still believe that the humanity still as strong as it can be. Is just there are loud assholes, forgive my language, that just wanted to divide the world for their own needs, for their own satisfaction.
Absolutely. I think right now, especially, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of let me protect myself and my family. There's a lot of closing off to other things that are happening in the world. And it's not that the humanity isn't there. I think it's being, as you said, it's just hidden in the noise. And it's also hidden through screens.
Yeah.
And I think, they have, when I say they, I mean they have been very successful in dividing and in making sure that systematic divide is very specific towards groups of people, and making sure that a lot of people don't know what's going on, in the world. And I think, I do have hope in humanity. I believe people are good, and it will take a lot from all of us to bring that to light again.
I think so too. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching Moments That Define Us podcast on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe so you know when the next episode is coming up. But not only subscribe, share with other people so we can build community around this podcast, so we can share more stories, more defining moments. Because as I always said, sharing a story has the power to heal. So subscribe and share, and let's build community. Thank you. I want to talk about your dad.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes.
So you said that it's been 5 years since he passed.
Yes.
And even when you were talking about the conversation you used to have with your dad at school, your face just light up. So I want you to tell me a little bit about your dad and how you are similar, and what's some of the best memories you have about your dad.
Gosh, I'm gonna try to do this without crying.
Listen, there's nothing wrong without crying.
My dad, he is definitely the reason that I do what I do when it comes to community. I remember, so we were one of a handful of families when we came to Colorado, and he wanted to make sure that anyone who was in Colorado was connected to a Sudanese person somehow. So I remember our house was kind of like the first step. If you're Sudanese and you're coming to Colorado, our house was the first step that you go to, whether it be for dinner or just small get-togethers or for Ramadan. I remember my mom cooking all the time, and we always had people over, whether it was, you know, the single young people come to school here, or, you know, just wanting to start a family here, to brand new families that were coming and didn't really understand, you know, the city or where to go or what to do. He was that for everyone here. And I remember every weekend they used to have like barbecues at the park to make sure that the youth knew each other, that us growing up knew each other, that, you know, in community, this was your aunt, this was your uncle, and having those relationships with them. And he was just that connector, that community person that everyone needed to know and wanted to know and just loved being in his presence. It's been hard without him. There's so many moments that I wanted to share with him. But he always used to tell me that, you know, before you're Sudanese, before you're American, you are a human first. And that's how I want you to walk in the world. And that's how I've been walking. And, you know, that's my love for humanity, my love for community comes from him. I think it was a surprise to my family when he passed just how many lives he's touched here in Colorado and back home. His sister, my aunt, told us that when they received the news back home of his passing, there were buses on buses of people that wanted to come in and say their condolences to our family, and that would tell stories of how he would send them money if they were wanting to go to school or wanting to build their houses, and he would help them in some way. And he even built a well in a village back in Sudan for, you know, it was a small village that couldn't get water to their village. And things like that he never talked to us about. It was more of, you know, his way of giving back. But hearing it from other people and seeing the impact that he had on people is something that just really, really made me very proud to be his daughter.
The world really need more people like your dad, because it shows so much just what a human he was. Like you said, when there were so many people that you and your mom and your family didn't know that he helped. I love the people that help other people and don't tell the whole world, right? Mm-hmm. Because it just shows, again, it just shows the humanity of him. And just looking at you and just knowing the work that you're doing, he's so proud of you.
Thank you.
He's so proud of you.
Thank you.
How do you feel his presence now?
Oh my gosh, every day.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, like you said, the work that I'm doing with community, the work that I'm doing with nonprofits, just being able to be a people person like him, I get that strength from him. I get that love for people from him. And from my mom as well. I mean, my mom is amazing, and she would always be the one to kind of remind me how much of my dad I am. So it's just being able to do, in my opinion, continuing the work that he has done, whether it be here in Denver or and national or even back home.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And I know that you're very involved in the Sudanese community here in Denver, right? So it seems like that your dad was that, like, leader of the community, right?
Yeah.
Because you said everybody that would come from Sudan would go through your house. And I feel like there are people like that, they need special skill set, right?
Yes.
To do that, because not everybody can be a leader of the organization or of the community. How has your community changed, or maybe didn't change, since your dad's passing? Are you still very involved in that, or how now is your relationship with the Sudanese community here?
I would say one thing that I'm very proud of with the community here in Colorado is that we're very close. There may be divisions in regards to politics or, with the war going on right now, but when it comes down to being there for each other, I know my community has my back. I know that I have a village behind me. And I would say since my dad's passing, we've actually had more people that have moved to Colorado. So it's getting to know them and introducing them to the community. But we've always been a very strong community. There's about 10,000 families here in Colorado. And, we're always doing something to ensure that, we're involved in some way. I think one of the things that has changed is that before we were the youth and we were, having events done for us, whereas now we've kind of taken that role to say, hey, we've grown up here. We know a lot of the resources here. Let's make sure that our community knows that, and how are we able to provide that for our community? How can we help the generation after us? But also for me, it's kind of a salute to our parents for them leaving everything behind, leaving their families behind, leaving their careers behind, to come here and want better for us, and what better way to give back to them through community, to be able to provide the resources and the support that we had to people who are just coming, or our younger siblings even, for example.
It seems like now your generation and the people that probably you grew up with that were youth, now you are taking the role. Yes. and doing stuff for the youth that's coming in. That is really cool. I want to talk to you about some defining moments that happen to you and your family, because you've told me that you guys went back and live in Sudan.
Yes.
So talk to me about that time. Why was the decision made? And why did you decide to go back?
That was not by choice, for me at least.
Okay.
It was my dad really, it was actually a little bit after 9/11.
Okay.
I was in high school. I remember actually after my sophomore year of high school. And I just was not in a good place. I wanted to kind of understand who I was a little bit more, and didn't really know how to do that. And so I think my dad picked up on that. And there were conversations of, we're forgetting Arabic, or we're forgetting kind of things about being in Sudan or our family. And he wanted to make sure that we didn't lose that part of us. And so he told us that we were going for vacation. And when we got there, I said, I think I want to stay a little bit longer. And so that turned into staying there for 2 years and going to school there. It was a very different Sudan living there than it is when you're visiting.
Yeah, it always is.
It always is, right? So we got to see a very different side of Sudan, other than, going visiting for a month or two. But it gave us the skills of, learning Arabic on a much broader level than we would have staying here. So now I'm very fluent in Arabic than I was before. kind of connecting more to our religion and understanding it from that perspective, and learning it from not just a Saturday or Sunday school, but like a week-long full-time school. But also the people, just the beauty that Sudan had to offer, that we didn't get to see on vacation because we were so busy going to family and this event and that event. But just the everyday lives of Sudanese people, and the culture and what that meant for us, and how do we harness that, and how do we hold on to that. It made me love Sudan so much more. It made me love the culture so much more. It made me have a better sense of myself, and this is why I think like this, because in our culture we do this, and this. So it connected a lot of dots, and I think it was one of the best decisions ever made for me, because it did give me that extra insight into who I was.
So you go back, stay for 2 years. I wonder, when you went back, because you've lived in US now for some time, right? Mm-hmm. And then you go back, what was the cultural shock that you experienced when you got to Sudan? But then also, what was the cultural shock when you came back to US?
Oh my gosh. I think a culture shock would be, so for our holidays, our Muslim holidays, for Eid, for example, they slaughter the sheep, right? Mm-hmm. And so they do that far, far away where you don't see it, and it's on a farm, and they just bring you the meat and you cook it and you're done. That's not the same way back home. So I remember we came to our house and there was a sheep, and my sister at the time was very young, and I believe she was maybe 6 or 7 years old. And we named this sheep, and we would feed it and everything.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like our pet, and we completely forgot that, this was going to be dinner. And I think it was the next day we woke up, and the man had come, and they had done the whole religious thing and slaughtered, and our cousins and the neighborhood kids were around and just looking, and to them it was very normal. And my sister and I come out and we start yelling and crying like, you murdered our friend.
Oh my gosh.
And so they're like looking at us like, what is wrong with you? And we're like, what did you do? You murdered our friend. And we just went crazy. And my mom, had to pull us aside and say, hey, in America, how during Eid we go and do this and bring the meat. This is the part that you guys don't get to see. And so I think for that dinner, we did not eat.
You did not eat your friend.
Shocked. We were in shock. And then afterwards, it became like, okay, maybe a little bit. And then it became normal that this is what happens. So that was very different. Very, very different. I think another one would be, in Sudan, all the women wear scarves. Mm-hmm. And not really hijab, but just have a scarf on their head. And I had to get used to that. I wasn't used to that.
Because at that time you were not wearing.
I was not wearing my hijab. So, okay. And I was, 15, 16 years old, and I'm wanting to show off my hair and all the different hairstyles and highlight this and all of that. And so, I would only wear my scarf here in America if we're going to the masjid or the mosque. So having it on me all the time, it just, to me, was, oh my God, why am I doing this if I'm not really wearing it for the right reasons? But understand that I came to understand that it's more of a modesty thing, you know. And so I had to slowly and gradually grow into that. But for me, it was very hard taking, a teenager from America to Sudan, changing everything, and having to kind of rebuild myself, I guess you would say. And then coming back, so I actually started wearing my hijab in Sudan. I remember we were in school, mm-hmm. and we were talking about, just as students on our own, we were just having a conversation into, if we do go back to America or to England or to Australia, it was an international school, so everyone was from everywhere. You know, if we go back and, you know, finish our education there when it came to college, are we going to come back to Sudan? Are we going to come back and help our country? And I think being in high school and having that conversation on its own was phenomenal. Just the great minds there. But it made me wonder about coming back and not really representing myself fully. And how did I want to show up if I did come back?
Yeah.
And so the conversation led to 9/11 and how people view Muslims in America. And, you know, they asked me the questions of, you know, do you get the looks? Are they scared of you and things of that? And I started thinking to myself, why am I nervous to represent that side of me to Americans? Or, you know, is this something that, why am I feeling like this? I felt like there was this heaviness in my heart that I wasn't really representing myself in all of my ways. And I went home. I remember it was, we had like a 2-week break, and I went home. And the next day we were going to visit my family, and I went and I grabbed my scarf and I wrapped it around. And my mom kind of looked at me and she said, "Oh, we're going to your aunt's house. You don't need to wear your scarf." And I said, no, I want to wear my hijab. And that, since that day, is kind of my moment of, you know, I'm doing this. And I remember right after it was Ramadan, and I wore it all through Ramadan. And right after that is, you know, my dad called, school ended, and we were coming back because I was going to college, and we were coming back. And I didn't want my mom to tell him that I had started wearing my hijab. And I remember when we got here at the airport, I stepped out and I had my hijab on, and my dad just started crying. Oh. And he asked me, you know, what made you wear it? And I told him, you know, it took me going to Sudan to understand the Sudanese side of me and to have that connection to that part of myself. But I also need to have a more stronger connection to my religion, and I don't want to hide that part of me. I want my scarf to be a representation to the world that I am proud of being a Muslim, regardless of what country I am in, regardless of what people may think they know of me. And I want to give them that opportunity to know me through the way that I represent myself.
Something was calling you. Because from that 7th grade, from questioning a lot of things, from talking to your dad, I feel like at that very young age, you started searching and finding out who I really am.
Yes.
I know I live here, but I think maybe at that time, obviously, because you're still so young, as you said, and you couldn't understand, but you starting to question, and then, and that, I feel like that was such a defining moment for you to go back to Sudan, to understand this, to see, oh, why do I have to wear it? But then, you know, being there and really understanding, like you said, I didn't want to wear it for the wrong reasons.
Exactly.
But then you found those reasons for yourself.
Absolutely.
Why you need to wear it. So a lot of the times, I feel like it's ignorance. It is what it is, because when people don't know and they don't want to learn it, they just assume, because of the news, because of everything, that a lot of Muslim women wear hijab, and because they are oppressed, the man makes them wear it.
Yeah.
I know it's not true, but I wanted to hear from you what it means to you to wear hijab, and also just in general, what the representation of hijab for Muslim women.
Anytime I hear that, I laugh, because, and again, I guess this goes back to people not knowing, Islam is actually a very feminist religion. There's chapters that speak specifically about women and the respect that you have for women. there's a verse that says ummak thumma ummak thumma ummak, which means, and then thumma abuk, which means you put your mom, your mom, and then your mom, and then your mom, and then your mom, and then your dad, to show the respect that it has for women. There's a verse that says heaven is at the feet of your mother's feet. Mm-hmm. There's a chapter about Mary, in regards to, you know, everything with Prophet Jesus, and in regards to her story and the respect that is there for her. And I think people, not knowing all of that, quickly assume hijab is not just a scarf. For me, hijab is a lifestyle. It's how I carry myself. It's how I represent myself to the world. And covering is more of a definition of, you know, I am Muslim, but making it visible.
Yeah.
You know, it is not a decision that a man makes for a woman. As I said, I didn't want to wear it for the right reason, for the wrong reasons. And you wearing it because someone told you is the wrong reason. The Quran says hijab is a decision between you and God. No one else has kind of influence in regards to that. If you're just putting on a scarf because someone told you, that is not hijab, that is a scarf. So my hijab is not what scarf I have on. My hijab is how I talk. My hijab is how my manners. My hijab is how I treat people that may not treat me well. My hijab is the way that I'm walking in this world. And covering up myself is letting the world know that I want to be represented for my mind, not for what you see. And in nowhere in the Quran does it say that a woman who isn't covered is less than a woman who is, or anything of that sort. That is a personal decision for you to make. And again, no man and no one honestly can make that decision for you. It was not made for me, and a lot of the people that I know. And I see, you know, even for us, like seeing little girls wearing it, and people consider, oh, you're oppressing them, they have to wear hijab. When it's considered hijab when you decide to wear it after puberty. Anything before that is a scarf, and because they want them to practice that this is something that we do, because you are in a country that it's not the norm, right? Mm-hmm. But my experience has been that I don't know, honestly, anyone who has been forced to, and I'm so grateful for that. But I know that there are people out there, and I hope that they can understand that, you know, at the end of the day, it is a decision between you and God, and a decision that you have to come to yourself with your understanding of your religion and what you want that to mean to you.
Thank you for teaching me and the listeners about that. And it just goes to show that you can ask questions and also Google it. Like read books. Like I don't know, just don't be just one-sided.
I was also going to say that, you know, even in Christianity, in regards to being modest or wearing a hijab, with the nuns, for example, that's considered a form of hijab where they're covered. You know, even people who attend church with some type of covering on their head. So hijab is not considered just the way that Muslim women wrap their heads. It's considered as a form of the way that you protect yourself, and it shows up in many different religions.
Yeah, you're right, because even thinking back, you know, growing up, so I was raised Greek Orthodox, right? And going to church, my grandma would wear, it's not a scarf, I don't know how to translate it right in Ukraine, but basically like a scarf type of thing, and she would like wrap it here. So her, like everything was kind of covered. Yeah. And even sometimes, like, so for when people marry in church, in Orthodox church, then you put something on top of them, like there is a specific, like, call it procedure, is not the right word, but when the priest is telling something that you cover yourself, right? So again, it's Wafa, I just, you know what I'm realizing with having so many different conversations, that we across the world, religion, races, have so much more in common
than we realize.
And then we let ourselves believe that we are so different. Oh, because she looks like this, or because she's from this country, because she chooses to love differently than I do. And it's just because when you said it, I was like, well, yeah. Started thinking back to my church.
Yeah.
And how, and it's, again, it is a choice. Nobody's making you. And maybe there are people there, maybe not, but I am grateful for your teaching and what it means to you and what you know about it.
Absolutely. Even for weddings, if you consider weddings in any type of religion, in any type of country, the veil, the white veil with your gown, that is a form of protection, right? Until you're covered or you're uncovered to your husband. That is a form of hijab.
There you go. There you go, people. Knowledge is power. Wafa, before we wrap up, I wanted to talk about Sudan and what's happening in Sudan, because it is a very important topic. It is important to talk about it. I wanted to hear your perspective, but for me, I feel like it's not as covered as it should be, because the world, it seems to be in such a turmoil. So what is happening in Sudan? What do you want people to know? And what caused what's happening in Sudan?
So, honestly, I know there's a lot of, or actually, there isn't a lot of coverage when it comes to what's happening in Sudan. I know that it's been labeled as the worst humanitarian crisis in the world that we've ever seen. And that's it. There's no coverage in regards to what is happening, what has happened, and what could happen, or ways that people can support. So what's happening is that Sudan went through a revolution in 2019 where the dictator Omar al-Bashir was put out of office by civilians through the revolution. And it was a very peaceful revolution. No guns were picked up. No violence was committed. It was very much through protesting and them not wanting him in office anymore. Through that, it became that the military, the Sudanese military known as the SAF, and the militia, the RSF, they wanted to kind of have a period of interim to be able to provide, an opportunity for people to come together, sit at a table and discuss what this is going to look like for the country. And the agreement that was made is that they would give a couple of years for people to have these conversations and kind of build relationships with the global world, to come up with a voting system, to kind of move forward with democracy in Sudan. The RSF and the military decided that they wanted the rule instead of allowing civilians to actually participate. And that is the war that we are in now. Because of this, them fighting each other, millions have been displaced outside of their homes. They've had to flee to other countries. Surrounding countries like Ethiopia, for example, Egypt, for example, Chad, and many that were not able to have that opportunity to escape are left with no food, no water, no electricity, no medicine. Many people have died due to this. Women were very much targeted during the war, raped, killed, and I don't believe there's a single person outside of Sudan living in the diaspora that hasn't been affected by this. My family has been affected by it. Everyone here in Colorado has been affected by it. We actually lost a community member who went to vacation with his kids who were there in Sudan. He was murdered on their way to the airport to come back to America. So I think what I would want people to know is that while this is the worst humanitarian crisis, while there are a lot of global powers that are fueling this, this is the time for humanity to stand up and not hide behind screens. This is the time for us to silence the noise and come together. And I know that there isn't a lot of coverage, but this is an opportunity for us to ask those questions, for us to come to our neighbors, to come to our community and say, hey, how is it that I can support? What is it that is happening? And be able to just provide that opportunity of learning and of being united together. There are a lot of organizations right now that are trying to get humanitarian aid into Sudan. There are organizations that are trying to help the families who have been displaced. And even the families here, a lot of families that I know are working 2-3 jobs just to be able to support themselves here while helping their family that it has been displaced back home. And I've heard many times, people saying, well, why don't people just leave? It's not easy to do where you can just pick up everything and go to a different country, especially when surrounding countries are closing their borders to you. One thing I remember about Sudan is that it was a very welcoming country to many refugees from Syria, from Ethiopia, from Egypt. And there were a lot of people from those countries that lived there. And it seems as though now that the Sudanese people need that support and need those people to lean on, we were welcomed with closed arms. We were welcomed with closed doors. And we were welcomed with silence. And while that's painful, I think it speaks to the resilience of the Sudanese people to know that they're pushing through and they're wanting more for themselves and for their country.
The resilience of people in the countries where this kind of stuff is happening is, I have no words, and it makes me so angry when people say, well, why don't you just leave? Like, look at yourself and see if something were to happen here.
Exactly.
And especially if you don't have the means to leave, or if you want to be in your country and protect your country.
Yes.
It's not the easiest choice, and especially what's happening in the world now, where because so much turmoil happening, what was happening and still happening in Palestine and in Israel, what's happening in Sudan, what's happening in so many other countries that we simply just don't know about,
right,
because the mainstream media doesn't cover it. But I agree with you, the humanity needs to come together and stand not for the power, but with people.
Yes.
The question I wanted to ask you, and I'm asking because I don't know, because you mentioned that there are a lot of Western power that's fueling this, and throughout the history, United States and a lot of Western European countries, it's in their interest to put somebody in different countries that have a lot of resources, yes, right? And fuel that and kind of be on their side so they can keep taking resources. So what kind of resources, I guess, or why do you think it's beneficial for the Western countries to have the situation that is happening right now in Sudan?
Sudan geographically is a perfect location. Sudan is the location where both Niles meet. So both Niles meet in Sudan. The White Nile and the Blue Nile meet in Sudan. So you can imagine how rich the agriculture is. You can imagine how much land there is. Scale size, Sudan is the biggest when it comes to northeast in African countries, I believe. We have a lot of gold. A lot of the gold that is sent to the UAE and other countries comes directly from Sudan. A lot of the produce that is sold in Egypt comes from Sudan and is resold to the Sudanese people. So Sudan is very, very, very rich when it comes to resources. And there are a lot of different countries that are benefiting from those resources. I mean, it's the same, tale with in regards to certain African countries where these global powers come in and drain the country of its resources, and a country that can be a first world country is deemed to be a third world country because all the resources are being taken out of it. I remember, my dad used to tell me, and I've heard stories, and there's books about back in the 70s and the 80s, Sudan was one of the richest countries in Africa, and that changed overnight. And so you can imagine, that those resources are still being drained out of the country to support and fund other countries, and while all this turmoil is going on.
I don't fully understand politics like on the very high level, but I often think it's because my human side. Mm-hmm. And I often think, each of the country that exists in planet Earth has something to offer, right? Either that's gold, either that's other different materials and resources. And I'm like, how wonderful would it be if we were just like, oh, Sudan has this, we have this, let's exchange, without killing, without, right? I know it's very naive of me to think that, but I'm like, there is a way to live peacefully with each other.
Absolutely.
But I mean, when you go back to history, just how America was started, how a lot of European countries, what they did to a lot of countries and nations in Africa, yes. how they drain all of the resources and kill, native people.
Yeah.
It is my hope that one day, I don't know if that will happen, but I often think we could do that, and the world will be so much better.
I don't think that's naive at all, to be honest with you. I think looking at kind of, I mean, I'm very much history and politics kind of fueled. But if you look at even countries where women now are prime ministers or are leading the country or are, in parliament or even as presidents, there's been a shift in their country. There's been a huge shift in their country.
Say it very loud. Say it very loud. Women are coming to power.
So I think that speaks volumes in itself in understanding that there are different ways to do things. And I don't want to say that, all men think alike. But, historically. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Historically, it's always been, I want the biggest pot. I want the most power. And I think there is going to come a time where that's going to not work anymore. And I truly do believe that if people stand together, like it could look different for our world. And maybe, like you said, maybe it's the humanitarian in us to want that. But what a world it would be. What a world it would be.
Right. I think we as women, we are natural caretakers.
Yes.
And again, I like what you said, and I don't even know why, because I do that also. Like, well, not all men or not all women, right? Of course, there are a lot of amazing men out there in the world who do a lot of good things. And also there are women in the world that do really horrendous things, right? But I'm just talking how we are naturally caregivers, and we trying to make sure that everybody's taken care of, right? Just think of any women in your life. Exactly. Are you good? Are you good? And I think when we become leaders, a lot of the times we wanted to do the same.
Exactly.
And you know what, when you said that in a lot of countries that West think like it's a third world country and we need to go and we need to save them.
Yes.
It's like, hello? In America, there has never been a woman president because, oh my gosh, and what's happening with women's rights here? So before y'all go and trying to save any other nation, save yourself here.
I mean, and it's funny because I've traveled a lot. I travel a lot for work. I just love traveling in general. And, you know, no offense, but there's a lot of cities here that look like third world countries, you know? And I feel that the savior complex is more of let's go fix our mistake. It's not really we're saving them. It's let's go fix our mistake under the impression of, oh, we're helping. And we've seen that multiple times over history. And not just from America, from many different countries as well. But I think it's that, you know, like you said, if resources were where they're supposed to be and shared ways in that they can be, we wouldn't have a lot of the issues that we have on a global level. I mean, even with Sudan right now, the amount of gold that has been taken out just within the last 2 years of this war, 3 years of the war, is horrendous to kind of even fathom that, you know, at the end of it, at the end of all of this is one of the reasons why a lot of people are in the situation that they're in. So looking at the bigger picture, it's realizing that while we may have that humanitarian side, there will always be those that want to put power and money over people. And I think that's where we fail as humanity, as humans.
For sure. We need more women leaders.
Yes, we do.
And just good leaders in general.
Yes.
Because, you know, both of us, I know we have that sense of humanity. And to me, I'm like, you know, even going around Denver, the homelessness is getting worse.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, on a human level, we all should have basic needs. We all should have house. We all should have clothes. We all should have food. Those are the basic needs.
Yes.
And go to the doctor without thinking that you are going to get bankrupt if you need a surgery. Like,
Right.
those are the basic needs. Because the thing is, like, when I think about power and people wanting all this power, I'm like, not everybody want or desire to be a leader. There are people who want to work at factories. There are people who want to work at the coffee shop. There are people who want to do all kinds of different jobs. But you have to provide the human, like those basic human needs.
Yeah.
And so to your point, we need to come as together. And I feel like that's slowly starting to happen. Do you feel like that?
I do. I think people are realizing the noise, as you said. There's a lot of noise, and people are starting to see through that. I think people through social media are being connected to sources and resources of information that they would not have through mainstream media. And I think people are connecting with each other to kind of spark that humanity within them. One thing that I always say is I always believe, you know, with my religion, there's something bigger than all of this. There's something bigger than all of us, you know. And when you put all this noise aside, regardless of how many billions you have, regardless of how much power you have, we all go out in a wooden box. We all, at the end of the day, go out in a wooden box. And we have to answer to someone higher than any of this. And I don't want to be answering with, well, I did it for the money. And I think people tend to forget that. I think people put that so far out of their mind that they lead with greed, and they lead with what we're seeing now. But I also think a lot of people are waking up to realize, like, hey, this is wrong. How can we do better? Why aren't we doing better? And let's do better.
That is such a beautiful note to end the conversation, that humanity is still in all of us. We just, for some, you have to dig a little bit deeper, but we all have that humanity. And like I said, it's Sometimes it had to get worse before it gets better. But my hope is that we are going towards better future that we leave in for our children. Wafa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today was the conversation for the heart. You filled my heart with so much hope and love, and I learned so much from you.
Thank you.
And I'm very grateful that you allowed me to have you on my podcast and that you shared your story with the world.
No, thank you for having us and for having this space. I think we tend to often forget the women, the immigrant stories of women, and the fact that you're putting a platform and putting women on this podcast to tell their stories is very powerful and very much needed. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you to all of you for listening and for watching. And remember, no matter where we come from, we have so much more in common. And as long as I can, I will keep bringing women voices into moments that define us, to sharing their story, to sharing their voices, to sharing their defining moments, because we all have a story and we all deserve a story to be heard.